Hello there, and welcome to another edition of the HuskerOnline show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, by the way, somewhere at the Lux Casino. That's where he's stationed for the week as he's covering the Crown Basketball Classic. We will hear from Robin later in the show as we talk more big picture about basketball and some of the issues. We're going to talk specifically about the games because this show airs on affiliates on different days of the week. So we want to keep it broad for our great affiliates. And also, I don't want to get flustered because of our great affiliates. Stephen M. Sipple last week on Monday challenged me on a fact check of something that did not need fact checked, and it caused me to say a word I shouldn't have said.
I kind of defend myself on that. So you're talking about the mid-'90s that Kelvin Sampson succeeded Billy Tubbs as the Oklahoma men's basketball coach. Sean, I was the beat writer for a football team that was in its most successful run ever. So forgive me.
Well, the Big Eight was pretty magical in that era too for basketball.
Magical. It was.
Norm Stewart,
yeah.
Billy Tubbs,
yeah, it was.
Larry Brown,
yeah, it was magical.
Roy Williams,
yeah,
Danny Nee. I mean,
Kelvin Sampson,
Billy
Tubbs,
the guy at Iowa State, not Tim Floyd, but the one before Tim.
Yeah, can't remember the name. Can't remember. Don't do this. Don't get flustered. Don't get flustered.
All right. Well, let's talk.
He went to Southern Miss. Oh,
you're talking about Larry Eustachy.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the guy before Eustachy.
Oh,
the older guy. He's Fred Hoiberg's coach.
Right. This is embarrassing now. This is embarrassing.
Where were you in the 90s?
I was
not watching Big Eight basketball.
Now, to undefend myself, I would go write columns about basketball. Johnny Orr.
There you
Hello.
go. You pulled it.
Hello, Johnny Orr. Pulled it from the recesses of my mind. I'll tell you something, Sean. When you sit down here and get a microphone in front of you and you're live, it's harder to pull names. Like if I was walking down that hallway outside, I'd be like, oh yeah, Johnny Orr. Of course I know who Johnny Orr is. But when you're in front of a microphone, sometimes it's a little scary.
All right. Well, let's talk football.
You want to talk ball?
As we are in the midst of week 2 of spring practice for Nebraska, we've now heard from both coordinators, Dana Holgorsen and then John Butler, the defensive coordinator, the last week, and kind of got a feel for both. I mean, the first impression is obviously just two completely different guys.
And it should be that way because Dana Holgorsen spent 13 years as a head coach and was at podiums all the time, be it in front of the press or fans or going out on, speak to people, right? John Butler buried in an office as an NFL assistant coach. So, I mean, yeah, the comfort level in that setting, which is sort of a daunting setting, right? At Nebraska.
Big room, 40, 50 people probably.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's just pretty formal. It's very formal. It shouldn't be as formal as it is, but it's pretty formal. So I get it. I can see why that would be kind of a test for a defensive coordinator that hadn't done a lot of that.
Well, call me crazy. I asked the question just like Mike Eckler.
What was your question?
I just said, Coach, with Mike Eckler having a defensive background as well, when you're not in special teams meetings and settings at practice, can he help you at all with your defense? Does he help out at all in any areas? And I mean, you would have thought I asked for like the nuclear missile secrets. I mean, it wasn't like, I didn't think I was out of line.
He said, I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah. I was kind of, I wish I had a way to follow up on that because I wasn't trying to you
weren't playing gotcha.
No, like Mike Eckler, I just figured, hey, I can't imagine Mike Eckler just sitting there for 2 hours after special teams are over.
Yeah, and I wouldn't read too much into John's response. I mean, I think it was just caught him off guard a little bit. Just probably caught him off guard. And you know what? Again, and that, like if you've done that a lot, and you've done it a lot, you've done a lot of speaking, and you've been in that situation too, where you get caught. But if you've done it a lot, you can dance around stuff. You can smile and make a joke. He could have done that. Like, I don't want Eckler in my defense. You could have said something like that.
Hell no.
Right. Why would I want Eckler in my defense? You might say something like that. Lighten it up a little bit. But yeah.
And maybe he doesn't do anything. I don't know. I don't
worry about it.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. But Yeah, he what we've learned is John Butler's not going to give up a lot, though. Like he's going to
and there's that conversation too. Like you asked him about it was
Sierra Wright.
Yeah, you said Sierra Wright is established at one corner. Who would be the opposite corner? Now that was very illuminating, his answer, because not only did he not want to say who was opposite Sierra Wright, who's battling for it, he would not even say that Sierra Wright had a job locked down.
Which in Sierra Wright had some of the biggest plays the defense produced last year.
Right.
I mean, the pick 6 at USC, the Illinois game. I mean, it made huge plays.
It'd be shocking if he didn't start. But John, now this is what I liked yesterday. And another question was about Deshaun McCullough
being a leader.
And Marquise Watson Trent being leaders of the defense. And he just said, I'll just answer it this way. We're glad they're here. He didn't go down the road of crowning guys. I thought it was curious, even like, really, McCullough and Marquise Watson Trent would already be leaders 5 practices in. I wonder if those guys even know all the guys yet, Now, you could come back very easily and say, well, Jamal Banks was a leader last year. He was at this time. You could say that. But I think it's a stretch just to assume guys walk onto campus and now they're leaders. Maybe they are.
Like Rocco Spindler probably is right now. I mean, I've heard that already.
That's a good point.
On
he is. Dana said it. Dana said it. So, but I'm not assuming it. And so I kind of like that, what John
I think you can just say, can those guys, even though they're new, can they bring some leadership qualities?
Yeah.
Like there's a way to, it's tricky though. Like, I mean, these guys I think are really careful. Number one, because Matt Rule has a certain message that everyone has to be in line with.
These guys, the coaches.
The coaches.
Yeah.
And you get the sense, we've seen it now. Coaches are very careful with what they say because it needs to fall in line with what the message of the program is.
Right. Yeah. I agree. So, but anyway, getting back to Butler, a lot of the interest to me about his time at the podium was he wasn't crowning anybody. He doesn't want to do that. It might not be his style. It might be a directive from above, or it might be portal related. The transfer portal opens April 15th.
And NIL related,
right?
Like if you say, man, so-and-so, this young player's really come on strong, he's going to be a difference maker. Well, if he's not getting paid like a difference maker, all of a sudden he's going to want to get paid like a difference maker, or somebody's going to contact him and say, hey, we can pay you as a difference maker.
And make no mistake,
that happens.
100. Those kids are mindful of the money. A lot of them, they pay attention to what others are making. It's something that is absolutely has to be dealt with by coaches to a certain degree.
And the amount of media coverage of spring ball here is a lot more than 99% of most schools. Like just
I have to think
the volume. I mean, I talk to colleagues around the country. The volume of people, the length of the interviews, all podium. I mean, it's just not like that. So there's more out there, is what I'm getting at, for eyeballs and prospective scouts to study about Nebraska.
Great point. Great. And Matt Rule is very aware of that. And perhaps
John you think Northern Illinois is having this? I mean, so like you wouldn't know like some of these things like a small,
but would Tennessee,
Tennessee, school like that, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Oklahoma, maybe Ohio State,
Texas.
Actually, I would even say Oklahoma.
No,
we had more media from Nebraska in the Oklahoma press box than there was Oklahoma media.
Right. I wouldn't say Oklahoma
when we went up there. That shocked me.
So
Ohio State.
I gotta say this. I appreciate the hell out of it. I do, that we get this access.
It's a great setup.
I was listening to the interviews, just preparation for the show. Deshaun Singleton, Javen Wright, Elijah Judy, and Butler. I mean, you get so much stuff. I mean, we don't write it all. We could write more. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot we get.
Let me say this to you, though. What is the number one asset of Nebraska?
The football.
For the football program, the fan base.
Yeah.
So you have to feed this fan base.
Yes.
Like,
that's a good point.
It doesn't make, there's no other place in the world with a population like the state of Nebraska that gets a support like this for a team. And that's a fact.
Yep. I agree.
I was interviewed by a overseas Indian publication once, and it wasn't some sort of fraud or scam thing. It was like a legit interview.
Sure about that.
I gave him my social security number and bank account info. But it was about like they were fascinated by the support that a place like this can get with this population.
Yep.
And around the world, it gets your attention anywhere in the world. I mean,
Yep.
so you have to feed this fan base because that is the most valuable thing to this whole place.
People pay attention. They pay attention to what Butler says at the podium. And he's not, I'm sure he's not used to that. Again, Dana is. He's been at West Virginia. West Virginia is an example of a very fervent fan base. You ever seen how they travel? It's very Nebraska-like. So that's why he's so at ease. He's very at ease.
And he's from Iowa.
You notice he jokes around, has kind of little quips, and because he's much more at ease.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk more offensive storylines out of the spring. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Back here on the Husker Online Show, Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, away on assignment in Las Vegas. We'll hear from him, though, later. But this segment of the show brought to you by Mando. And I got a real excited phone call from Sip. He was picking up a new supply of Mando and was just giddy. You're giddy.
I was really happy. And you asked me yesterday what I use for the stick, deodorant. I use the Sport, but I also got Mount Fuji. It's really good.
Living on the edge a little bit there.
A little bit. And I discovered that, foot smells can be a problem for a lot of people. You can use this.
The cream?
No, you can use like the stick in your shoe. You can put it on your feet.
It's full body.
Yeah. Well, some of it is. And it's good. And again, it happened to me yesterday. I always tell this tale. I went to the gym yesterday, Planet Fitness guy, and pulled off a shirt that I'd actually worn twice. As I was pulling it off, it still smelled good. It's amazing. That deodorant is amazing.
When you've transitioned, I mean, as you get older, that pure sport is you're a high level athlete, but you've transitioned more to the Mount Fuji, it sounds like.
I have both.
Sure. You have both. Okay. But we've got a great deal. If you've never tried Mando, go to their website. So get the Mando starter pack at shopmando.com. You get 4 items, a stick deodorant, a spray deodorant,
and
really 2 additional items that come with it. You get to pick between several different options. We're going to give you $5 more off that with free shipping with promo code Husker. So you'll get 4 Mando items at $35 with free shipping with the promo code Husker. And that's 40% off what you would pay individually. So give it a try.
Yeah.
You'll get 4 items, $35, free shipping. This is not like some subscription service where you're going to get deodorant sent to you every month. I mean, it's a one-time deal to try it all out. And I promise you, as Stephen M. Sipple said, you'll want to just use it all the time.
Yeah, it's a saver. It saves you.
Shopmando.com, promo code Husker. Let's talk offensive storylines as we transition into a more traditional spring format here, where we're going to hit on offense for one segment, defense in another. I want to talk about the offensive line, and I brought this up on your show earlier this week on the morning show. Where would this line be right now if they didn't go out and get Elijah Pritchett and they didn't go out and get Rocco Spindler?
It would be. They'd be lost. It'd be sort of lost. I'm not going to say lost cause, but this spring would be rough because you're without. Like Turner Corcoran's not practicing. Henry Latofsky's not practicing.
Gatula.
Teddy Prohaska's not practicing. Gunnar Gatula's not practicing. You see the trend here. Knack is back. Tyler Knack. That helps. That helps a lot. But there's so many guys that you'd be without. So I just don't, when you think about how much could you really get done, continuity from spring to August would be lacking big time. But now you have Spindler, who's pretty set at right guard. I'd say set. And Elijah Pritchett, who's set at left tackle. And they've already impressed. 5 practices in since we're doing this show. They're 5 practices in. And they're good. They're good. They've been good. They've been what the coaches hoped.
And then that other tackle, it could be so many options right now. Lutowski, it could be Gatula, could be Teddy, could be Gunner.
Yeah, there are options.
I mean, they have
options.
It's kind of like you have door number 1, 2, 3, or 4.
There's a lot. Could you put Knack out there? I think you could. I think he's moved.
I still would have a hard time placing him over 4 players that I mentioned that have all started.
I know. I agree.
You got 4 guys that can play tackle that have all started
Yeah.
Big Ten games.
Yeah,
all of them.
Yeah.
And I would argue that when he was healthy, the peak of Teddy Prohaska, or the ceiling, was the highest. But he hasn't been healthy.
What you're getting at here is this line could be Donovan's best line, right? Donovan Raiola.
He's got a bunch of dudes, and he got everybody. He lost Ben Scott and Ben Hart, and he replaced them with Spindler and Pritchett. Pretty good trades.
So yeah, what they did, what you're looking at now is Donovan Raiola in his 4th season at Nebraska. This could be his best line. This is 4th season. This could be his best line. So it'd be the best line sometime at Nebraska, right? How was Frost's last line? It's pretty good, actually, wasn't it? His last offensive line.
Who was on that line?
Oh, you're usually good at this.
Well,
was Hymas gone? Was Farniok
yeah,
gone?
those guys were long gone.
Oh, they were long gone.
Those were Mike Cavanaugh, Mike Riley recruits.
Okay. But they played for Frost.
For a year or two.
Okay.
All the way till 2020. Those guys played.
I'm a year off then.
Well, Frost's last season was 2022.
I always think of it as, it was.
So
I always think of it as 2021 because he lasted 2 games.
No, Corcoran and Teddy were in those tackle roles. I mean, they had guys like that. But
bottom line, this is the best Nebraska line in probably 5 years. It should be. It should be, right?
And there's 7 or 8 guys that can play.
Shouldn't it be? Can we say that?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I do think, like, you always get the questions from fans. Like, they want to see like Grant Bricks play or Preston Taumua, but look, it's not a good thing just to throw young guys out that aren't ready.
Well, you don't need them right now. It's more of the conversation.
And I always throw this back, like, who they jumping?
They don't need them right now.
Like, who would you put Bricks over right
Nobody.
now? Like,
Nobody.
You just can't. If you're having a reasonable conversation about the O-line and the experience returning, you're not just because, he was a 4-star recruit, we're going to start playing him. You develop a line step by step.
Yeah. Bricks, I watched him with the tackle group the other day, and he's just, you're talking about, he's not jumping Pritchett. Even with the injuries, he's not jumping Tyler Knack. I don't know that he would jump Knutson or Brock. Is it Brock Knutson? Knutson. Or he's not jumping Gunner when Gunner's healthy. There's I don't know if he's jumping Grant Segrin. I mean, so yeah, he's got ways to go. It's not that it's bad. Matt Rule talks about this very openly. When an offensive line is hitting on all cylinders, or in good programs, he said, you don't even have discussion about playing a guy like Bricks. You just wait till his 3rd or 4th year. And then here we go.
And here's the progression now. Machachok, Sledge, they're in year 3. And Gunnar Gatula's in year 3, and we're talking about him now.
Yeah, you're right.
So those 3 particularly,
have
emerged, and then you hope this year, as the year moves on, we're starting to talk about Taumua, Gibson Pyle. Well, Gibson Pyle's a player too. We always leave him out, but they are high on Gibson Pyle.
Those young guys, that young class of guys is pretty good. Gibson Pyle, Grant Bricks, Taumua. We saw Taumua at the Polynesian Bowl where you're wearing quarter zip today. Good job. So they're pretty well set in that room right now. It's a good room.
Now, and one other comment, Dana Holgerson said,
what?
They want to be a 50-50 team, which shouldn't shock anyone.
That's what Rule said.
Rule said that.
Yeah.
And they last year were a 51-49. They ran at 51% last year. So that shouldn't shock anybody. I mean, they're going to strive for that balance. This is, a team that generally will run 65 snaps a game.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. 50-50 is about what you'd expect.
Maybe 70.
Trend too far into that they're passing more than they're running,
Yeah, like that's the difference. Like in the Frost era, they would get over 100 snaps in games.
So much different.
Tim Beck would get over 100. Well, in this era now, it's 65, 70 maybe.
Mm-hmm. So much different.
So in that game, you're getting 35 runs, 35 passes. I mean, that sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially if you're not running the quarterback.
Right. That's what changed this entire discussion. That Nebraska, and I always mention it, but it's worth mentioning. They were 98th running the ball last year nationally. You got to get better than that. You can't. You could probably get to 9 wins like that, but hard to do. Not easy.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, even without having a running quarterback, it's hard to get 200 rushing yards in a game.
Right.
Because if you're only going to run it 35 times, if you get 200 rushing yards on 35 rushing attempts, that means you're going to have to have some big runs in there.
There's that part of the discussion, but you always identify the correct part of the discussion is you got to run the ball when you need to be
situational.
Yeah. Like the biggest part to me is, and we've seen it at Nebraska too often, where they couldn't salt away games because they couldn't run.
The Pinstripe Bowl was one of the ones this year where we saw them do it at the end.
They did it.
And they called that 4th and 1, and Ramir up the right side got it. And I mean, it was a physical run. I mean, that's what you want to see.
Yep. I recall a Wisconsin game in Lincoln, real windy daytime game where they should have won, but they could not close out the game because they couldn't run.
2012?
No.
Not 2012. Mike Riley's first year, 2015.
It might have been later than that, actually. I thought it was a Frost game. But anyway, they just that game strikes my it was a real windy game. Wisconsin came in here and won a real low scoring game, and Nebraska should have been.
Oh, you're talking about the game where Mickey Joseph and Bill Bush.
Yes.
Yeah, that was 2022.
Right. Thank you.
And it was frigid.
It's really cold. Nebraska should have closed it out. They couldn't run late.
Yeah, Wisconsin converted a wheel route play, and that quarterback threw a ball up in the air in that 30-mile-an-hour wind.
Yep.
And they came down and they won the game.
But the reason they got the ball late is because Nebraska couldn't salt it away.
They couldn't finish it off.
They couldn't finish it off. They couldn't run the clock out because they couldn't run.
All right, when we come back, let's talk defense. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. Later will be joined by Abby and Robin. But this segment, Sip of the show, brought to you by Huel. And we've both been on this Huel kick where you kind of have this in-between period where you don't have time for lunch and you just want something with protein and packs a punch. It's healthy. Mm-hmm. That's Huel in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. And it comes in multiple great flavors, strawberry, banana, vanilla, iced coffee, chocolate, also in a powder version as well, where you just put a couple scoops in and shake it up. But what it does is it gives you focus, energy, protein, everything you need.
Yeah, I look forward to every morning. I have them all grouped in the refrigerator. I just grab one out the door, and I know that if I get caught in something, it's not going to be a problem because it's like you have a full meal. So Huel, and it tastes good. I like the vanilla. I really like the vanilla. I could just do vanilla. I haven't done the iced coffee. I'm waiting to do that one. I've done everything else.
Waiting to splurge.
I like the vanilla.
But yeah, it's balanced. It's affordable too. Under $5 per serving. I mean, if you go get a shake somewhere else, you're going to spend way more than that. So it's convenience to have that with the protein, all the things that you want. And look, if you've never tried Huel, we've got a special here with Husker Online. Go to Huel.com/Husker. Use the promo code Husker, and you'll get 15% off your order plus a free gift. That's Huel.com/Husker, promo code Husker to receive 15% off your order plus a free gift. Thanks to Huel for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. Okay, let's dive in, Sipple, into the defensive discussions here for Nebraska. And I want to start with the old guy discussion because, a year ago, we've kind of honestly seen this play out a few years in a row, where older players decide to come back, particularly on defense. We saw it with Deontay Williams. We saw it with JoJo Doman. There have been older guys that have chose to come back. Last year, Ty and Nash, both came back on the defense. Well, this year, Javin Wright and Deshaun Singleton are both back. Javin Wright, a 7th-year senior, the first one of those ever in the history of Nebraska football.
25 years old, and I think a lot of his value now is he understands multiple positions. It's the same with Singleton. I think their versatility is a big part of their value. You don't have to pull them off the field, Sean. There's certain situations that they can handle that you might ordinarily have to sub. Both those guys are long, athletic. And you know what they both are, by the way? They're both vicious hitters. I'm not saying that they're perfect players. Singleton himself mentioned at the podium that he's working on his coverage, but they're both vicious. They're both great in the box. And it's you want to be old. God, Javin is 25 years old. And Now, will he start? I don't know, but he can play jack. He can play multiple positions. That's the good thing.
To think about his recruiting visits to Nebraska were Scott Frost's first year.
He's bridged the gap. He was before, like he talked at the podium, he's bridged the gap between the old college football and the new college football. He was pre-transfer portal, right?
Well, the
pre-NIL for sure.
The portal officially began in 2018.
Okay, so but
it didn't really ramp up. NIL was like injected it with
right.
Obviously a lot more.
And NIL came
2021.
2021. So he was before that. And he said, as a young guy, he had to watch his money. That he would get hungry and start thinking, I better get to the training table. And now he just said it very quickly. He said, now we're blessed. We're blessed. He doesn't have to worry about being hungry.
Yeah, and we just don't know enough to know where this is all going to go. And that's a whole. We're going to have this discussion all summer, because April 7th and next week we're going to get the final ruling on the House versus NCAA settlement case, and then July is when all this will start. But yeah, these players are living large. All of them. They're
living large.
Most of them.
Back to the football discussion. Singleton, I think a lot of the reasons Singleton came back because they expanded his repertoire. He'll stay on the field more. So we'll see. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that'll look like, but I'd look for that. Those guys are going to be on the field.
So Singleton, and right, I think you'll see Rule this spring with veterans like that. They probably won't play as many snaps. We saw that a year ago.
I wonder what that'll look like.
Well, like Tommy Hill.
Oh yeah,
and the key starters that return
didn't scrimmage a lot.
They kept them out of all the stuff,
right?
And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case again, because what those guys can do.
Yeah, but you want to see Marquise Watts and Trent. Right. You want to see Deshaun McCullough. You want to see Williams and
Shavers.
Shavers. I mean, a little bit about.
Yeah, but he hasn't played over 1,000 snaps.
No, McGahee. You want to see those guys. By the way, Shavers and McGahee. You want to see them go to another level now. I mean, like Dylan, they're kind of in that same category. You don't want to see them back off. They kind of made a splash. Now, don't back off. Keep going. Because Shavers and McGahee could be stars, right? They could be stars in this program. You saw what did Vincent Shavers look like to you in the Pinstripe Bowl?
A dude,
a future star. Now, can he carry that?
And McGahee as well. His ability to force fumbles
affects the ball.
I mean, he has that ability.
You can't have too many guys like that.
To strip the ball. Like, Nebraska's been good at getting sacks, but they haven't been able to get strips on these sacks. And I feel like those are guys that can do that.
You know who was good about it? They lost him was John Bullock. He got his hands on the ball a lot. You noticed that last year?
You know what? John Bullock at Pro Day looked really good, actually.
Did he?
Physically, yeah. You just hope that he can get an opportunity in a camp somewhere. But he was an unsung hero.
His film's got to be pretty good, right?
I mean, you think about that season, that Iowa game, if they just win that game, I think we're looking and talking about it a lot differently. It was a good year.
Oh, the Iowa game took a lot out of it.
But think if they would have been able to have the Heroes Trophy and the Freedom Trophy in Lincoln together.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been a huge jolt.
Yeah.
Then you win a bowl. You win a bowl game. But I also believe the Pinstripe Bowl was the right bowl for Nebraska. It was a good matchup.
Why do you say that?
I just think Boston College, for a team that hasn't been to a bowl as long as Nebraska, hasn't won a bowl game in a long time.
Because if you beat Iowa, who you go play?
You were going to play Missouri and Nashville, or you might have gone to Tampa, but Michigan beat Ohio State, so that probably changed that discussion at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I forget.
You're probably right.
Michigan played Alabama, and Missouri played Iowa. So I think it worked out. I mean, Boston College, I'm sure Iowa almost beat Missouri, but Iowa would have been a good matchup against Boston College too.
Boston College was without its two best players.
And one of them is going to be a first rounder.
But Boston College I'm not diminishing Nebraska's victory. Boston College was very physical.
Well coached
and physical. That game, I don't know why we're doing this, but That was a physical brawl. It was a brawl.
I really enjoyed just that setting, that game.
Oh my God, did I? Yeah. You're in the Bronx. You're in the Bronx where they're using torpedo bats now. The Bronx, it was a fabulous trip and it was a fabulous game, I thought. But the thing I'll remember about that game is how physical it was. And I appreciate that about Rules program. We don't say that enough. I mean, you know, we nitpick a lot about the program, but he has established physicality. You cannot play in Rules program without being a physical player.
Well, in Boston College, they had only been held under 100 rushing yards one other time all year.
Yeah.
And Nebraska was the team that did. I mean, so they stood up to a team that had been a good running team all year.
More than stood up to them. I mean, they beat them.
And most of their runs were just garbage scrambles. They weren't, designed tailback plays.
Yeah, and as someone who's followed this Nebraska program for years, I really appreciate when Nebraska goes and plays a team like that. That's Boston College is known as a physical program. That coach, Bill O'Brien, that's his style. Nebraska I thought they were more physical, and I love that. And we'll see that again this year. This is a physical team.
All right, when we come back, Abby Barmore will join us, and we'll take questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. We're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Abby Barmore joining us here for the mailbag as we take your questions. But before we get to the mailbag, Sip, it's brought to you by who?
Larson Motors. It almost feels like a family now. A family of Husker Online and Larson Motors all together. You could go meet our family in Nebraska cities. If you happen to be looking for a new vehicle, how about a new experience at Larson with an O Motors in Nebraska City? It's one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all of the major brands in one location. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram has never been easier. So how about starting your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com? Go to LarsonMotorGroup.com or go to Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people,
real deals.
Yeah, I hope you said that like you mean it. Good job.
Good job, Abby. All right, what do you got for the mailbag now?
Okay, first one. What is the best group of receivers you've seen at Nebraska? And where does this group have the potential to rank?
I think the best group has to be
Anunwa Bell, Westerkamp.
Yeah, I would. Anunwa Bell, Westerkamp, Brandon Riley, Alonzo Moore.
Bam.
I mean, that's
a good
pretty much all NFL guys.
Good group. That's a real good group.
In fact, Westerkamp was like the one that didn't make it in the NFL.
And he was really good.
Moore and Riley were role players, and they made the NFL.
Really good. I don't know. Did Moore make it?
Yeah. He played for the Chiefs for a little bit.
Sean's going to get mad at me here.
He was a practice squatter. I mean, he made some rosters at a point, and then obviously Anunwa made it for a while. And Kenny.
That was a good group. Kenny? Did you say Brandon Kenny?
No, Brandon Kenny was
Bell.
Before that.
He was before that. Brandon Kenny was very good, though. A name that does not get brought up enough. Kenny was a horse. How about, didn't Bill Callahan have a group that we could put in there when he had who they had with Purify?
Well, it's Purify, Nunn, Swift, Peterson.
That's pretty good. Hold the phone.
France Hardy.
I might be going there.
France Hardy.
I might be going.
You might be going to that group.
Yeah.
Terrence there was no real NFL in that group, though.
Purify would have been, but he got in trouble close to the draft. Certain NFL player.
His kid at Westside as a junior just long jumped like 23-2 in the first meet of the year.
Ooh, what a debate. So that was Maurice Purify, Terrence Nunn, and who else?
France Hardy, and Nate Swift.
And Peterson.
Whoa.
That's a group now. That's a group too. I'm going that group. I'm going
the other group is the NFL pedigree because Anunwa ended up having one of the better. Now, Niles Paul was teamed up with Anunwa for his run too.
Anunwa would have had a big time NFL career, but he got hurt. He got cut short. He got hurt, neck injury.
All right, next question.
Okay, so how do you see this group if they live up to their potential? Where are they going to rank?
Hard to say. I can't put them with those groups right now, and I can't do it.
The difference is now the quarterback play. If Dylan can be what we think he can be with Dana and Dakiel Shorts,
and protection,
and all of a sudden that group could look pretty special. But we're not going to get ahead of ourselves with the offseason national championship here. We're not doing it.
No, Abby, I said no, they're not. I'm not putting them in those categories that we just covered. Nope, not doing that. Not those guys.
It's hard to like put in context like Osborne's receivers, but they had good groups in the mid 90s too. They just didn't throw.
Yeah.
I mean, Abdul Muhammad and Cluster Johnson.
Oh, those guys were good.
Different offense.
Yeah, different offense.
All right, what do you got?
Okay. What is the most impressive individual performance you've seen from a Husker player?
Jeez.
I'll go Roy Halou, Missouri, the record-breaking rushing game. But the Sioux game against Texas. I mean,
that's where I'm going.
You can't look past. That's the defensive one. I mean,
what about Amir against Miami?
That's up. I mean, Tommy Frazier against Florida.
Oh, we can go all the way back. This isn't limited to the last.
These are Husker players, so full send.
I mean, God, don't do that. Who knows? I don't know. There's been so many.
I mean, you could go to the 73 Orange Bowl against Notre Dame when Johnny Rodgers ran for a touchdown, caught a touchdown, and threw for a touchdown.
I mean, wasn't there some crowds?
The year he won the Heisman.
That's just. Hey, Abby, that just blows my mind to try to think of, because there's so many over the.
Oh, Crouch's best game in terms of numbers was the Colorado game they lost.
Yeah. So scratch them. I mean, there's just so many. I said Amir versus Miami. There's probably 10 that you could come up with.
I mean, a bad one. It's like Trey Palmer versus Purdue.
No, that's not the top 25.
It was the record-breaking receiving, but it was the context of the game didn't mean anything.
Right.
That's why Missouri was a top 10 team.
I'd still maybe like the Sioux Texas game has to be top 5. I think Rich Glover once had, I think, 21 tackles against Oklahoma as his middle guard. You have that would have to be one you'd consider, right? If a middle guard has 21 tackles, you'd have to consider that. He did. Or 20, whatever it was. It was a lot.
I mean, if you really want to go back, Tom Novak in a game against like Notre Dame, I think he had tackles on 20 out of 22 plays.
There you go.
I mean, you can play this game all day, baby.
We could. And it would, but it's going to bust my brain to do this. Sioux against Texas, it's hard to forget that. That's ingrained in my brain. That's what's ingrained in my brain, Abby, is the look in Colt McCoy's eyes on that big screen at Jerry's World.
What about Frazier, though, against Florida?
There was fear in his eyes. I've never seen that level of fear. Sue was breathing down his neck the whole time, and McCoy was scared. He was scared.
I'm honestly surprised he didn't block the last field goal. Like, they had him in the middle there, like, to go out. Like,
yeah,
that would have gave him the Heisman.
Yep, it would have. There you go, Abby.
Okay, what is Nebraska's biggest need for the class of 2026?
Oh boy, secondary's got to be up there. I think they have a lot of guys leaving. They need a couple, but I would say there's not one giant need. I mean, defensive line's always a need.
It's always a need.
The O-line, but if you recruit right, you shouldn't have to go too far off like standard numbers. I think the big question for me is, what is the number? Are they going to take about 15 high school guys? And how many of those high school guys are going to be like highly paid, like Dawson Merritt level type players you go after?
I think the answer is bigs on defense. I just don't think there's quite enough of them right now.
They signed 3 real good ones last year, though.
I know you need more, though. You need more.
Cade Pedshock, Tyson Terry, Malcolm Simpson.
That's a good group.
Good trio.
It's a good group. I'd say you need 2 more for sure.
All right, next question.
Okay. This feels wrong to ask without Robin, but which men's basketball player was or is the most important for Nebraska to keep? Obviously, Connor Essegian announced he's coming back.
Okay.
Rink Mast.
Yeah, that'd be my number one answer.
Because I mean, look, they're bigs this year. That was a letdown. I mean, they just didn't get enough from Mia or Andrew Morgan to the point where in one of their wins in this college basketball club, I mean, they had to put Cale Jacobson in to kind of man like a small 4-man position, and they need more.
Now, hold on, I thought Jacobson played. He didn't play point, but didn't he play more because Raleigh wasn't playing?
Cale Jacobson was like playing a bigger role. I mean,
we can ask Robin about that.
Well, we're not.
Me and you debate this sort of in a low key manner. I thought Morgan was pretty good.
He couldn't finish around the rim. Couldn't do it. He misses free throws.
He could finish around the rim.
Not at a high level. No, he couldn't. The Michigan game, he had about 6
struggled.
Nebraska's layup ratio is one of the worst in the conference.
But can you at least give me this? Mia was more disappointing than Morgan.
Yeah, because you got the sense they paid heavily to get me.
Right. Okay. We can end on that.
All right. Final question.
Okay. What is your favorite golf course to play in or around the Lincoln area? What's your best shot?
We don't play golf. We don't play golf. But Jim Egger, middle of town. You don't even need, you can just take a 7 and a 8, or a wedge over there and have a time.
I wish the Knolls was still around.
You played Sean, you don't play golf.
I know, but I did at the Knolls because in my house now I could walk there. So that would have been clutch even more so now because you could play the front 9 there in under an hour. And it was great because I only have an hour sometimes and I could play 9 holes. It was perfect, but we're Firethorn social members and you can play a par 3 there and it's challenging. But that's really all. I mean, I can play that a few times a year and that's it. I mean, I'm still rolling with clubs from 2008.
Right.
I mean, I got terrible clubs.
Abby, the answer is probably some kind of putt-putt golf around here. Like there's a putt-putt golf place out on Cornhusker Highway. That's probably where we need to be.
There's probably 3 things you won't see me do. Play golf competitively.
That's for sure.
Water ski or snow ski.
That's interesting. I think you could be a decent water skier.
I've tried.
It's hard.
It's hard to get up. I mean, you try to muscle it.
Yeah.
And
it's hard.
You can't do that.
Right. But yet we say that I didn't live on a lake, but I grew up around the lake scene in Columbus. There'd be little kids.
It's easier for little kids.
And
Carly,
high school girls.
Carly was my youngest daughter was really good at it. Right. She was got up and did it right away. But yeah, no one's going to be impressed if I got hurt skiing.
No,
they would say you're an idiot. Yeah. Just like if I hung my Christmas lights up on a 2-story house and I fell,
nobody's going to be impressed.
As Barry Alvarez once said, nobody's going to feel sorry for you.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. So,
sometimes.
Abby, when is the last time you swung a golf club? Humor us.
I don't think I've actually golfed a real round of golf. I'm going to be honest. I've done some putt-putt. We used to go out to the lake a lot and hit tennis balls for dogs in the lake with a golf clubs. That was probably the last time I actually swung a golf club.
Doesn't count, but that sounds fun.
I'm not from a golfing family. Let's just say
scrambles
that.
are the way to go, though. If you don't play a lot of golf, and if you play with good players in your scramble team, then you at least feel like.
One of the worst moments of my life is when we bought our house and there was a golf club that was left behind by the previous owner with golf balls. And I put one down in the front yard and we lived across from Hartley School. And I thought, I'm just going to take a little swing at it. It won't go far. I smoked it and it went right through the huge window pane at Hartley School. I had to go over there and tell the principal it was a mess.
And did you have to pay for it?
No, I didn't have to pay for it.
One of the worst moments of your life?
Pretty bad. I mean, it was a huge window pane.
Yikes.
All right. On that note, let's go to break and we'll talk to Robin Washett from Las Vegas. Next, you're listening here to the HuskerOnline Show. Final segment of the HuskerOnline Show. Sean Callahan, Steven Sipple, Robin Washett joining us from Las Vegas in his room at the Lux Casino, or Stephen M. Sipple fact checked me. It's called the Luxor.
The Luxor.
Lux for short.
Yeah. Us locals like to call it the Lux, though.
But you've been out in Vegas all week, Robin, and since our show does air on affiliates throughout the weekend, what I want to ask you about this event is just big picture. Is there changes that you could see to make this event better? Is this thing going to make it? It sure seems like it got a good year one, and the NIT obviously really didn't get any high level teams like we've seen in past years. What have been your thoughts being on the ground floor?
Yeah, the event itself has been surprisingly well run. I mean, for a first year tournament, a lot of times you get hiccups and, there's just kind of logistical issues and everybody's just kind of scrambling to figure it out. But they seem to be on top of it, which, with it being Vegas, an event town, they know what they're doing. Then you got the Fox financial backing. they've got plenty of money to spend. And so, they've got the resources, they've got the setup to make this thing an extremely viable deal. And I think the next thing that they need to work on is just the timing of it. That is by far the biggest hurdle with this event. With it being 3 weeks removed from the regular season and the portal opening a week before the first games even start, it's just really hard to get teams to play in it. Nebraska was in a unique situation where they were a senior heavy team that wanted to stick it out and play. You saw several others that turned down invites because of coaching changes or because they didn't have enough players on their roster to field a team. And so what would help them immensely is if the NCAA pushes back the start of the transfer portal window to right after the Final Four. That way you could play this entire tournament before the portal opens, which would go a long way in roster retention and having more teams to be even available to play in this deal. But if they can get that part of it figured out, I think this has every opportunity to become the second tier postseason tournament in college basketball, just because of the money behind it, the setup here in Vegas, and the fact that they're going out of their way to get power conference teams and get eyeballs from a TV standpoint. So like I said, they're off and running here in year one, but I think this has the potential to really surpass the NIT for good if they're able to keep going and get that scheduling figured out.
What was the crowd like for the Nebraska-Arizona State game? Nebraska? How many Nebraska fans we talking about?
It was sparse, but it was easily 90% Nebraska fans. And actually, when that comeback in the second half happened, it got a little loud in there. So it was the diehards, a lot of locals, people that live around Vegas. There's a pretty good Nebraska contingency that didn't have to travel far. On my flight from Omaha, there's maybe like 4 or 5 Husker fans on that flight. But I think what the plan was, people were just kind of waiting and see. If Nebraska was lost, then nobody was going to go. But they won, and so we'll see kind of what the turnout is tonight. But if they advance into the weekend to the semifinals, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a significant influx of Nebraska fans, because Nebraska fans do not need many excuses to make a weekend trip to Las Vegas more often than not. So I think the crowd should get better and better by the game.
And obviously, Robin, there's a lot of things shaking with the transfer portal for Nebraska. Who are some of the targets to zone in on? A couple familiar names right now for Nebraska fans.
Yeah, the big one is Price Sanford, the Iowa transfer, 6'7", junior to be, wing, shot just under 40% from three-point range, and coincidentally had his 2 biggest games of the season against Nebraska. So he has very much been on their radar, not only this season, but you go back when he was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school at Waukee Northwest out in Iowa. He took an official visit to Nebraska and was very close to committing, and had his older brother not been an Iowa Hawkeye, and had he not had a really long-standing pre-existing relationship with Iowa staff, he may have been a Cornhusker out of the get-go. So this is one that kind of caught attention as soon as he hit the portal. He took an official visit last week, shortly after the portal opened, and he visited Illinois. He was supposed to visit Ohio State, canceled that trip, and all signs are pointing to him, potentially picking the Huskers here very soon. So that is number 1 on the board. And then there's a couple other names too. You mentioned familiar names. There's a guy that wore a Husker uniform a couple years ago, and Jamarcus Lawrence, who just hit the portal earlier this week. And from what I've heard over the last, week or so, that if he had an interest in potentially coming back to Nebraska, Nebraska would probably welcome him with open arms, just because he's a guy that knows the system. And if you look back at 2 years ago on that NCAA tournament team, he was playing really well in a interesting situation for him, where he moved from a 2-guard to a point guard, and he struggled with that a little bit, but he kind of found his footing, especially defensively. And so, he's a offensive minded guard that can address shooting. He can address point guard, and he's got the familiarity with what they want to do and what Fred expects of him. So as long as he has an interest, and based on the comments he made to me earlier this week, I believe he does. That one seems, kind of rounding third, maybe getting home here pretty soon.
Those are 2 good names. Those are 2 guys that would help you. Robin, do you feel like, though, Fred could use a big-time marquee player, a marquee scorer?
Yes. And, those are conversations that he's had hundreds of Zoom calls probably since the portal opened, and even before the portal opened, communication with agents. That's kind of the name of the game now. So they've been working on that for a long time now, and more and more players are still entering the portal by the day. And so what I keep telling people on our message board that are kind of starting to worry and get impatient is that just because we don't know about it doesn't mean that things aren't happening. I can tell you for a fact, Nebraska has been extremely involved in contacting portal recruits. You saw earlier this week, they put out a 1890 tweet graphic from Fred Hoiberg, basically trying to drum up some more money because, they, like you said, they need to go get an elite guy. They need to go get a Bryce Williams. They need to get James Palmer, Tran Petaway, that guy that when the shot clock's winding down, they need a bucket. The play's just kind of gone to crap. Like, give him the ball and go make a play. And right now, I don't know if they have that guy. So that is priority number 1, 2, and 3, along with addressing shooting across the board at every position.
All right, final question, Robin. They have an assistant coach spot that needs filled as well. Have you picked up any nuggets or morsels of information on a timeline or maybe even some names to watch?
Yeah, I talked to Fred on Tuesday after their practice and just kind of asked for an update. And, obviously, as you would expect, they're keeping it close to the vest like they do with most of these coaching searches. Go back to when they hired Adam Howard. His name came out of nowhere. But basically until they announced him as the new assistant coach. So Fred knows a lot of people. He's asked around, and I've been told that there's been plenty of interest, both ones that Nebraska has entertained and ones that they really haven't. One name, I guess, this is just kind of me throwing out a hypothetical. I don't know if there's any actual traction here, but Matt Gatens, the former assistant at Iowa under Fran McCaffrey, he was not retained by Ben McCollum at Iowa. And so he was a big reason why Price Sanford, along with his brother being there, committed to Iowa in the first place. I talked about that relationship. That was kind of the start of it. So, he's a guy that's familiar with the Big Ten, offensive-minded coach. I'm sure has, with his Iowa ties, a pre-existing relationship with Hoiberg. And then, if that helps you get a guy like Price Sanford, then, how many more boxes you need to check there. So that's one that I would just keep an eye on. I don't know if anything, again, has caught any traction there, but if I'm just spitballing names, that's one that I might throw out there.
All right, lots to follow. Robin's in Las Vegas. He's been doing a great job. Robin, looking forward to seeing you back and hope you've had a good trip out in Vegas.
It's been good. I feel like I've smoked 20 packs of cigarettes. I don't smoke, just for clarity's sake, but the kind of hovering cloud of menthol around the city is something I've had to adjust to, but we're making the most of it.
All right. Well, Robin Washut, thanks again. Abby Barmore, Steve Sipple, plenty to follow on Husker Online, not only with basketball and the transfer portal, but obviously plenty of spring football, softball, baseball. Check us out at HuskerOnline.com.